I was at a local Digimon TCG event and was surprised to find so many people who loved the Digimon TCG but had never played a Digimon video game before. So in honor of Digimon World Next Order re-releasing on Switch and PC next February, I wanted to give you all a list of my top Digimon games in case you haven't played them. I want to try my best at being unbiased because gaming is an expensive hobby and some of these games are hard to get a hold of. So I'll tell you what I like and also give you the major complaints that some people have about these games. Starting with Digimon World 1 on the PlayStation 1. A classic, and honestly a revolutionary idea for its time. I look at the Digimon World game and feel that it's the natural evolution of the 90s VPET craze. It's such a cool idea. You take the little keychain VPET and say, hey, what if this thing came with a buttload more content? A story, more monsters, new 3D graphics playable on your television, an entire little digital world to explore, the works. So in this game, you play a protagonist who is sucked into the digital world, as per typical Digimon fashion, and you are told that you need to save File Island. Apparently, Digimon have been leaving the city of File Island and they are becoming feral, so you need to convince them back into the city by knocking some sense into them. Literally, the proposed solution is violence. So, you're given your very own Digimon and set off on your own Digi-adventure as a Digi-destined. The gameplay loop is fairly simple and it can be pretty hit or miss for most people. The game has two key components, monster raising and training, and adventuring and fighting other monsters, but the gameplay leans more heavily towards the former, the raising and training, and much less towards the latter, adventuring and fighting. As the game progresses, you'll be spending more and more time doing the raising and training before you can adventure out into the world again. So here's kind of a breakdown of how it works. You take your Digimon to the gym where you can choose which specific stats they train: attack, defense, speed, intelligence, all of the good old JRPG stuff. What stats you focus on are also important for the monster collecting portion of the game, but more on that in a minute. Once your Digimon is strong enough, you'll be able to adventure out into the world and you'll fight wild Digimon along the way. After a period of time though, your Digimon will pass away of old age, and the stage of your Digimon, Rookie, Champion, Ultimate, and how many life cycles it had will determine how long it lives next time. The max life cycle is 12 in-game days. As you progress through the game, you'll unlock higher areas, which means that whenever your Digimon is reborn, you'll need to spend more time at the gym before you can adventure out again. Some people really don't like this gameplay, but then there are people like me who absolutely love it. I think the big problem is how people approach the game and what they want out of it. When I turn the game on, I want to raise a monster, but when most people turn on these games, they are more looking for a typical JRPG experience, exploring, fighting, story, etc. So for the latter gamers, it possibly feels like the game's core concept is less of an experience and more of a roadblock or hurdle that keeps them away from the experiences that they prefer out of gaming. As for myself, I love the monster raising aspect. The main reason I come to Digimon World Games is to see what kind of Digimon I can get. For me, the fun is less about typical JRPG fashion and more about time spent in the gym and raising my monsters so that I can see what other monsters they turn into. The exploration and battles are just there for me to see how strong my monster is and how well I'm doing in training them, which is a great transition into the next big piece of the experience. The monsters you will have access to are determined by how you raise your monster and which stats you choose to focus on. How often your Digimon eats, what you feed it, how you train it at the gym and how often, when you choose to discipline and scold it, and a variety of other factors will also determine what new Digimon your current Digimon digivolves into. The game is intended to be played like a simulation where you receive good and not so great Digimon based on a trial and error experience. This can be another sticking point for some, and I think that's a non-issue now, if so. In the past, people didn't like these games because they all had a favorite Digimon they would prefer to have as their partner. But there's no way to determine your Digivolution past the rookie stage unless you already have prior knowledge and experience with the game. Nowadays, though, you could just look up a guide, which is why I say it's a non-issue in the modern day. Regardless, I prefer to play Digimon World the way it was intended. To me, the trial and error aspect is the game, and knowing exactly what to do from the beginning kind of defeats the purpose in my opinion. Now the battle system in this game is, like the rest of the game, hit or miss. You have little to no control over your Digimon in a fight. Each fight is its own simulation based on the Digimon's stats and AI, so when a fight starts, it's all up to your Digimon. You can call out some commands and you'll gain access to more commands as the game progresses. Aside from that and using items, you have very little influence on the fight's outcome. Once your Digimon starts winning fights, you'll be able to take on the bosses, or the Digimon that need to return to the city. Each time you beat up a Digimon to return to this city, you will usually gain access to upgrades for the city. Bigger and better food supplies, an arena for battling, shops, etc. The city grows as you progress through the game, and it's fun to unlock everything. A couple final notes to make about this game. First, no Mega Evolutions. The game is pretty lengthy and challenging as it is, so Megas aren't really necessary. Once you get towards the end, you'll have an ultimate form that can pretty much steamroll any other Digimon, so including Megas would have made the game much longer and a bit more difficult towards the end, which is a great transition into the next point, the difficulty curves and spikes. This game is highly recognized as unforgiving, to put it bluntly. It's rough, especially in the early game. You will always end up with a Numamon on your first playthrough, and there is practically no tutorial. You really are just thrown into the world with no information or direction. As someone who loves challenging games, I welcome this. Other people may absolutely hate this though, because the only other alternative is to read wikis and watch walkthroughs, you know? Nobody wants to do homework before having to play their game, but if you want to know from the get-go rather than failing forward, like I think the game is intended to be played, then that's what you're gonna have to do. Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. Now we're getting into the typical JRPG stuff. If you want less simulation and monster care and more adventure with JRPG combat, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth is for you. The game is very story-focused, so I'm gonna leave out a lot of details and will remain vague as to not spoil too much. Basically, due to the early game events, your character ends up as a detective who can leap through cyberspace. You use your newfound powers and partner Digimon to solve crimes, and you get caught up in a crazy corporate conspiracy that, in typical Digimon fashion, has you, a teenager, as the Digidestined, fighting to save the world. A couple cool things about this interpretation of Digimon. First, it is very heavily inspired by, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, Mamoru Hosoda's interpretation of the internet and the digital world. He was one of the directors of the Digimon short films that were dubbed in America for the Digimon movie, and he directed Summer Wars. Please go watch Summer Wars if you have not. It is so good. It's one of my top 5 movies of all time. Also, Digimon are more interpreted as computer programs, tools, and actual computer viruses. So rather than typical monsters, a big part of the game is hacking, and Digimon are often used to do the said hacking. Stronger Digimon are equivalent to stronger hacking tools. That's not how it really plays out mechanically or systematically in game, just story-wise. I think it's a neat interpretation of Digimon. There are 249 Digimon to collect, and you'll collect them by first copying their data, or how you catch Pokemon with a Pokeball. You're going to catch your Digimon really just by encountering them. Digimon data is copied each time you encounter one, and when you encounter a Digimon enough times, its data is stored in a bank, so the catching process is automatic. Stronger Digimon will have to be encountered more times than weaker and younger Digimon. Once you have a Digimon, you can raise them to Digivolve in 2 ways, and I love this system. The first way is obvious. You battle them so they can gain experience. Eventually, they level up and you can Digivolve them. The second way, and this was the big reason I 100%ed this game, is with Digimon farming, and I found it quite addictive. You're given a farm to hold your Digimon, and your Digimon can train for experience points on their own. Kind of like the daycare centers in Pokemon, except you can train up to 50 Digimon at a time. Yeah, 50. 50. But it wouldn't be a Digimon game if each Digimon had a predetermined evolution line. Oh no. Most Digimon can digivolve into one of 3 or 5 different evolutions. Which evolution your Digimon has access to is going to be determined by its stats and level, and unlike Digimon World on the PS1, you are given an idea of what Digimon are available for evolution and what the requirements are. Digivolution is manual and doesn't happen automatically like Pokemon Evolution or even like in Digimon World, so you can continue training until you gain access to the Digivolution you want. And if for some reason you still don't get the Digimon you thought you were going to get, you can just de-digivolve it right then and there. De-digivolving is actually a big part of the process. There are 2 stats in the game that will also determine the possible evolutions. One is ABI. Most Digimon start off with a low ABI, and the ABI is raised depending on how many times a Digimon has digivolved and de-digivolved. Most Megas will require a high ABI, so you may have to cycle evolutions for a minute before you can reach the Mega status. But given that you have the farms, experience is shared among your party, and experience is handed out like Halloween candy as soon as the mid-game. It's not really an issue. The other stat is Cam, which is basically your friendship level. It'll grow more quickly when your Digimon is in your party. My only complaint with Cyber Sleuth is that certain points feel more like a visual novel than a game. The first 45 minutes of the game are nothing but exposition and tutorial, and it's super annoying. All I wanted to do was fight Digimon, but there was always a wall of text in my way. Once you finally get past it though, the game is great. Battles are usually 3v3 aside from random encounters and some tough boss fights. You can hold up to 11 Digimon in your party based on the Digimon cost. You have a stat called Party Memory, and each Digimon has a cost. Your total Digimon cost cannot exceed the Party Memory, and each Digimon's cost reflects how strong that Digimon is. I imagine this system exists to stop you from grinding all the most powerful Digimon in the early game, which really isn't impossible, and then just steamrolling the whole game with a bunch of Royal Knights. The battle system is a bit more complicated than your standard monster fight fair, like Pokemon, but I'm not going to talk too much about it. In short, there are 3 type paragrams as opposed to Pokemon's 1 type paragram. So most Digimon will be a part of the first, which is the Digimon type. Vaccine beats virus, virus beats data, data beats vaccine. Or they can be a free Digimon, which means they aren't a part of that first paragram. They have no type. Then you have attributes, which are the second paragram, and the free equivalent to that is called neutral, meaning they don't have an attribute. Attribute's going to be things like water, lightning, fire, and stuff like that. So if you're already confused, great, because I'm not explaining this further. All you need to know is that it's way more complicated than other monster fighting games. I didn't even mention movesets, which they can get huge, and also really overly complicate things. Now, for some more complaints, I already mentioned that there is a lot of text in this game, but it's not all bad. Honestly, the story is pretty great, especially towards the late game. A common complaint with the story is that it kind of drags up until about chapter 10-ish. It drags a lot, and I agree. It is a good story overall, though, and it's not what you would expect from Digimon, because it's more meant for young adults who were long fans of the IP. Additionally, the game feels padded with a ton of mandatory side content. You heard me correct. Also, mandatory side content. Each chapter will consist of 2 halves, the actual story, and a bunch of side quest mini-stories. Some of them are actually okay and pretty fun. A few even directly impact the overall narrative, but the majority of them I just don't give a shit about. And I wouldn't mind if I could just skip them, but you can't progress to the next chapter until they are all completed. It feels kind of like padding, to be honest, though I will say you can get some pretty useful items from some of them. While I'm discussing the writing and story, I should also mention that the translation is utter garbage. There are a ton of misspelled words throughout the game, and I mean a ton. And on top of that, the English just feels really stiff and stifled. There are several instances, even in the earliest parts of the game, where I'm sighing and muttering under my breath. I'm just like, oh, people don't talk like this. People don't act like this. This is so horrible. Play it for yourself. You'll see exactly what I mean. Digimon World Redigitize, English fan patched for the PSP. Okay, so real quick. This game was never localized, so if you want to play it, you'll have to download a fan-made English patch. A quick note, some people do prefer the DS version because there is a whopping 424 Digimon in that version. So there is a DS port of the game that adds way more Digimon. But I don't know if there's a patch for that. Also, PSP is obviously the superior handheld console, even better than the Nintendo Switch. Feel free to fight me in the comments. Much like the last Digimon World game, the high concept is the same. You're isekai'd off into the Digimon world, only this time you aren't alone. You have friends. It's not much different aside from just plain being better, and I love the portable nature of it on my favorite handheld system. Sony, please bring back the PSP. Not the Vita. The Vita was absolute garbage. Just the PSP. Bring that back, please. Anyway, some improvements include being more lenient with care. One of the reasons you'll always get a Numemon on your first playthrough of Digimon World 1 is because you have a limited amount of time to respond to your Digimon's needs. So, for example, if it needs to use the bathroom, you need to go right then and there, and if you don't make it to the toilet in time, that counts as a care mistake. Too many, and you won't get the Digimon you probably want. Redigitize is a bit more lenient, which is great. Training is also made more fair. In the previous Digimon World, you have to play this slot machine minigame, and winning awards you the maximum stat gains. The slots were replaced with some more skill-based and timing minigames. Much more fair, but still not handing the max stats to you on a silver platter. And then additionally, if you are okay with taking a little bit more time, there is kind of like an easy training mode that you can opt into, which will just automatically win most of the mini games for you, but at the cost of some lower stat gains. The AI for Digimon fights is vastly improved, and your Digimon are more receptive to your commands. So battles feel less RNG based while still retaining the lack of control in order to focus on the training and raising nature of the game, meaning your Digimon can only win fights if you know what you're doing as a tamer outside of the battles. You also have the option to customize your Digimon with items and accessories in this game, a neat little touch, honestly. Want your Digimon to feel more unique? Give him a top hat and a bow tie, or a handlebar mustache and some Ray-Bans. Before moving on, I do want to mention the arena and the story in this game. I actually really loved the story this time around. It felt much less like a Digimon game and much more like I was a part of a Digimon anime. I still have other games to cover, so I can't get too in depth, but if you like the Digimon anime of old, you'll love this story. And the arena is an absolute blast in this game. I spent too much time there, and I beat every Digimon in the arena. It's so much fun. Digimon World 3 for the PS1. I love this game because it feels like someone at Bandai said, screw it, we're going to actually make a Pokemon clone. And I am so serious. Quick side note, this is actually a Digimon story game, but for some reason it was branded as a Digimon World in the West. So story means JRPG, world means Monster Sim. So this is actually a Digimon story game because it's more of a JRPG. So you play Junior, who loves Digimon and wants to become the Digimon Master, World Champion. Once he chooses his starter Digimon, he will need to go on an adventure with his two friends, challenging the gym leaders in various cities so that he can collect their gym badges and eventually enter the Digimon League, Digimon Championship. But along the way, there is a nefarious organization who is stealing people's Digimon, and Junior needs to defeat them and their leader. I am not making this up, that is the actual game. I love this so much, unironically. Oh, also, they do the online video game anime thing where the kids get stuck in the game and they can't get out. I often suggest this game to any Pokemon fan who feels the Pokemon franchise has gotten stale. Digimon World 3 is familiar in the ways that matter, yet different in so many places that it feels fresh, starting with how you collect monsters. Each Digimon will have access to a tree of different forms, and what forms are available will be based on the stats and level of the prior form. For example, you gain your first champion evolution when your rookie reaches level 5, and your first ultimate when your champion reaches level 20. But you can gain access to another champion once your rookie reaches level 20, and so on and so forth. Some Digimon can only be unlocked with the proper stats, which you can train by a combination of leveling up and playing an RNG-based game at the training gyms. Each time your Digimon levels up, you get TP, training points. You can then use those points to level up specific stats, but the gains are random. The two big complaints about Digimon World 3 revolve around the grind and the unclear nature of the progression. First, the game sees a ton of unfair difficulty spikes. You can't just naturally progress through the game, you have to spend time grinding experience because it's not very balanced, honestly. Secondly, the game is never super clear about where you should go and what you should do at points. Playing this game without a walkthrough as a child was very infuriating. One final note, apparently the US version is incomplete, and I just learned this yesterday. The European version allegedly is the superior one and comes with a ton more content and fairly lengthy post-game. I've only ever played the US version though, and I love it. It's in my top 5. And finally, my number one Digimon game of all time, Digimon World Next Order. That's right, this is my favorite Digimon game. I am so super stoked to play it again on my gaming PC, and I highly recommend you give it a chance. Following the previous trend of Digimon World games, this one is the same, but much better. I actually think it serves as the best entry point to the monster simulation games because it's much more forgiving and modernized. This time around, you get 2 Digimon, and I actually think this is less of a gimmick as it makes for some more complex gameplay. Now, you aren't just focused on raising a monster all willy-nilly. Now, you have to focus on creating a balanced team that can tackle a large diversity of potential situations. To further accommodate this, the game allows you to train, feed, and interact with each Digimon individually, allowing you to cater a customized training and meal plan to each one. And of course, because you have 2 Digimon, DNA Digivolution is present in the game, and it comes in a few flavors. The first is EXE skill, or like a finishing move between 2 compatible Digimon. The second is to permanently DNA Digivolve one of your Digimon while making the second one weaker, and sometimes your Digimon will do it just on their own after losing a fight rather than dying, but I have no idea how it triggers. This game also comes with the inclusion of a tamer skill tree. As your tamer gets better at raising Digimon, you can unlock skills that either make training easier and less time-consuming, lengthen the life of your Digimon, increase the number of resources you can farm, and a host of other improvements. The battling system also feels improved upon with the inclusion of order points. Order points allows you to choose your Digimon's next move without draining their MP, which is great when you consider that the MP pool was a problem in previous games. You would always have to spend a significant amount of time training your Digimon's MP regardless of its build, because you would usually run out of MP before the more challenging fights when exploring. However, you now have an additional points pool to pull from. Another huge upgrade comes in the form of the city building aspect. Like the previous games, you can build your city by recruiting Digimon for fast travel, better food farms, shops, and other things. But now you can upgrade the facilities to make them more effective and offer you better perks and bonuses. It feels much more rewarding this time around. The final notable addition is camping. Camping does a few things, but the big ones are recovery and storing materials you collect to upgrade the city. It sounds simple, but it makes exploration much more enjoyable and inviting as opposed to past titles where the exploring probably felt a bit more like a risk to newcomers of this kind of game. I do have one massive complaint about this game though, and I mean massive. The number of Digimon. Digimon World Redigitized, the port for the DS, had a whopping 424 Digimon. Next Order, which was released on the following generation, only includes a little over 200, and the PS4 version did not make any additions to the roster, and it doesn't look like the Switch and PC versions are either. This is a tad upsetting, but it has been confirmed that other Digimon video games are in the works. If they are working on a new World title, then I would much prefer the funding be dedicated to that project, but there really needs to be a bigger roster this time around. Two minor complaints about this title are that it is way too handholdy. There's a lot of tutorial, and the dub is complete garbage. I don't feel the need to expand on those 2 points. Anyway, guys, that is the video. If you've played any of these Digimon games, please let me know which is your favorite down in the comments. Also, are you excited for the Digimon World Next Order re-release on Switch and PC? I know I really am. Like I said, it's my favorite Digimon game. So I'm super stoked. But anyway, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't, and we will see you next time. Peace.